Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's last post ceremony. My name is Craig Burrell, and joining us today from the Royal Australian Air Force is Wing Commander Belinda Johnson. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. We acknowledge the members of RSL and Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria, and RSL Queensland, who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection by visitors to the memorial. If you are able, please stand and join in singing the National Anthem. Please be seated if you can do so. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn their loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the hearts of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight, we will read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 102,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection.
Today, we remember and pay tribute to Private Mervyn Harold Esposito. Mervyn was known by his family as Mooty. Born in 1894 to Frank and Mary Esposito of Eagle Hawk in Victoria. His father was a licensee to the local Cricketers Arms Hotel, and Mervyn attended the local state school before starting work as a tailor at a prominent establishment in Eagle Hawk. He was an elocutionist and he won a number of prizes at the Borough Band's musical and elocutionary competitions. He was also a member of the Dramatic Club, the Australian Natives Association, and regularly attended the local Presbyterian Church. Mervyn enlisted into the Australian Imperial Force in August 1914, just months before the war broke out. He underwent some training and left Australia with the first contingent the following October. During the voyage, he was nominated as Batman to Captain Herbert Hunter of the 7th Battalion, a well-renowned sportsman turned soldier. In the early hours of the 25th of April, 1915, the 7th Battalion landed on Gallipoli in the near darkness and raced for the heights. They spent days establishing the defensive position and reorganising before being given orders to attack the Turkish front line on the 8th of May. During that operation, Captain Hunter was killed by a Turkish bullet while his feet were being treated for wounds. By June, the vicious fighting back and forth had died down into a tense standoff. And by summer, the Australian soldiers began to suffer from diseases like influenza and enteric fever. By July, Private Esposito himself had also contracted influenza. He was evacuated from the peninsula by hospital ship. By mid-July, the sister at the hospital wrote to his family to say that his health was improving daily. However, the day after that letter arrived, he received a visit from the Reverend Davidson to inform his family that he had died. Mervyn's condition had worsened whilst that letter was in transit to Australia. He'd contracted enteric fever and died in the hospital in Cairo on the 8th of August, 1915. Mervyn's brother Ben had been in Cairo with the 21st Battalion since June, but didn't find out about Mervyn's illness until it was too late. Ben later wrote, "He was in Cairo a month, and I was unable to find it out. He'd come from Gallipoli, poor lad. He was broken up, his nerves racked to pieces, and he was run down. He'd been at Gallipoli too long, and when the fever got him, he was unable to fight it off." Mervyn had been buried before Ben had been informed of his death. And so the best that he could do was to visit his grave and put flowers on it weeks after his death. In a letter of consolation to his parents, Ben wrote, "It is awful, but remember, poor old Moot died in service of his country. Thank God he was a good, clean lad. If there was ever a more loving son or a better brother, I never met him. Bear your cross as he died as a soldier serving our country." As Ben continued to serve, Mervyn remained at the front of his mind. And 12 months later, he wrote again to his family, and he said, "If anything happens to me, do not worry. Think of the rest of the dear children, and perhaps I will see dear Mooty again." Mervyn Harold Esposito was buried in Cairo War Memorial Cemetery with full military honours. Today he lies under the simple epitaph, "Greater love hath no man." Mervyn died 16 days before his 21st birthday. His name is listed on the roll of honour to my right. It is amongst almost 62,000 Australians who also died while serving in the First World War. His photo is displayed today by the Pool of Reflection, and this is but one of many stories of service and sacrifice that are shared here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Private Mervyn Harold Esposito, who gave his life for us, for our freedom, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, as we are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Poziere or in the low scrub of Gallipoli with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes the last post ceremony. We thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial and we wish you all a very good evening.